So today we'll touch base on how AI and blockchain can turn subjective information into verifiable and usable intelligence. And thank you for being here, Daniel.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
Yeah, good to have you. Daniel is actually coming from a very technical background. He's coming from more point of view of math, processing, cybersecurity, finance, and systems architecture. Starting with that, Daniel, how did that shape the way you think about noisy markets and trust-heavy workflows?
Yeah, sure. So that kind of background fundamentally forces you or provides you with the ability to see things in a different way, right? So oftentimes, with trading, and it's when I started trading, it was obviously fairly auspicious for a math person to become a quant. So that wasn't a new thing. But just my background gave me a just vantage point from which to see the market. So when some people see a chart, I see a signal. When some people see noise, I see something that can be filtered. And so it's just a matter of how I put my skills to work to interpret this data and maximize the potential from the situation. So I developed this product, risk management product, from that vantage point, and I use it myself. And then I said, why don't I bring it to market?
That's great. So tell us a little bit more about your background, though, where you're coming from. As we did mention math, so it's more like applied math and physics to be precise.
That's right.
Daniels also has a background in working at NASA, Raytheon, Palo Alto Networks, Citibank, and quite a few others. And it's mostly your work has been highlighted mostly through your analyst work, I would say, but please do correct me if and if you have anything to add. I would just like to clarify a bit on the
Sure.
background. If you can tell us a
Sure.
little bit more where you're coming from and what is your past experience.
So I graduated in 2008 with a master's in math and actually a dual major in math and physics for my undergraduate. So I had a total of 3 degrees. And I realized, people don't pay you to sit around and do integrals all day.
Absolutely.
So I started, really to develop a passion for AI. Back in the day, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be a doctor or whether I wanted to go into tech.
This is sorry about that. It's a early passion for AI, but we're talking about what year was that in the mention?
So I started really getting into AI 2005-ish. So I like to say I was doing AI long before it was cool. So
Oh yeah,
if you
that's
remember,
pretty early.
yeah, if you remember back in the day, we didn't have the cloud. We didn't have the tools that we have like TensorFlow or Keras, and obviously we didn't have LLMs. So if you wanted to do something AI related, you really had to write it yourself or pay, thousands of dollars. For example, MATLAB had a package for neural networks and so forth. So they were quite pricey. And if you remember, there was a little issue that happened in 2008. So I was really studying to be a quant, and I really wanted to go into that industry. But 2008 happened, and so that's when I started off at Raytheon. I actually helped design the back end of their firewall called RShield, and it used a neural network to look at the behaviors of the malware, potential malware. So this was a fundamentally different paradigm at the time because your other competing software would basically look for signatures, and so this would actually look at behaviors. So it was quite a game changer, and all that I wrote myself in C++. The neural network, handling the
Oh,
data, all that kind of stuff. Because again, we didn't have the fun tools that we have. That in 3 lines of code, you basically construct your neural network, for example, with like TensorFlow. So that's
absolutely.
really where my career started. I kind of got tired of the military industrial complex, for if you know, you know. And so I went into kind of pivoted over into finance, where I was working with some trading technologies, developing my own. The software we're about to talk about today dates back to 2012.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
we.
it's been
Oh wow, yeah, that's a bit advanced in the technology, not yet quite where we are today. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I see you do come from a pretty long background in data and AI. I mean,
yeah,
you're not quite from the Eliza a
not quite
prototype,
that,
but
but
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, that's I'm not a
that was
whippersnapper
something else.
either. So,
Yeah,
um,
that's
yeah,
a
one
different
thing,
time, but it's definitely quite in the it's kind of I would say pioneering AI.
it's the
It's the very
pioneer
beginning.
level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We were at that time we were in, and I actually wrote a book about this. Uh, but we were actually at that time in what we call an AI winter. So when AI, for whatever reason, doesn't deliver or there's a pull in funding, we go through these periods called AI winters, where there's just not a lot of interest in it, not a lot of development. And it comes and it goes, it peaks and valleys. So in the early 2000s, the theory was more or less established, but the processing power wasn't quite there yet. We didn't have the cloud. We didn't have, you know, these Core i7s with crazy power. You had that started to change with the Pentium
Absolutely.
4, which was the precursor to the i series. And that's when we really started to see that influx of, you know, because it made VMs possible. So you started to see this transition to the cloud. And of course, you know, you could have your mixed feelings about Facebook and Google and some of those other giant corporations, but they really led the way and paved the way for the ability, because, you know, again, necessity is the mother of invention. So they needed this technology to be able to go
Uh,
through, you know, parse through mountains of
yeah,
data.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. With
so I was basically
including with
following it all along through that.
I've noticed some of your past work. So you gave it some direction and some of your past projects. For example, you created a system that sees direction, magnitude, asset relevance, and novelty from just a headline or from just a few phrases. So just I'm trying to understand this better. If you can walk us through actually what happens between the headline and what you call a signal, or what the traders might actually call an important signal.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a let's take it step by step, right? So you are correct in that the technology looks at the headline. It doesn't actually parse the article. And the reason for that is the studies suggest that people don't even read articles at all. They react immediately to headlines. So the idea is that the sentiment, and specifically risk sentiment, and I'll get into what the difference is here in a second, but the idea is that that risk sentiment, the information, the data, the signal, to whatever you want to call it, is embedded somehow in that headline, right? So there is
Yes,
a
sir.
stage, there is a you know fairly involved you know steps of pre-processing. So again, you know, a lot of this I had to do from scratch because, you know, we're dating 2012, 2014, you know, when again, we didn't have the technology of embeddings, for example. So the technology has evolved quite a bit since then, but you know there was a lot of pre-processing. For example, if you had Federal Reserve, those things are what we call co-locations, two words that really are one entity. Morgan Stanley, examples like that. You know,
Absolutely.
going through the and do it going the extra mile to really ensure that the system's able to recognize these things effectively. So that's like the tokenization step. Then I would pass it on to a you know the actual classifier, which was a voting model of some that performed really well. So I took four of those and I glued them together. Later on, I would develop my own graph algorithm, which we'll talk about in a second. But the end result is,
Yeah.
it's kind of a structure of different things, right? So you have the
Okay.
what I call the risk sentiment. Now, the risk sentiment is very different from just sentiment. So with risk
Yeah.
sentiment, if I say stocks went up today, right, or stocks rallied, versus I say bonds rallied. Okay, well, if I say like the movie was good versus, I like my house, whatever, those
Yeah.
things all contain good sentiment, right? Positive. Now, the statement stocks are rallying and bonds are rallying, if viewed through that lens, those sound like the same thing. Bonds, for example, are a risk off asset, whereas stocks are a risk on asset. So, oftentimes, we haven't been seeing this quite as much lately, but oftentimes there's an ebb and flow between them. When one goes up, the other goes down, and vice versa, especially when people are in what we call risk on mode. That means pulling out the champagne, going ham on the stock market. That is, in general, what we call a risk on sentiment. And the converse is obviously risk off, right? So typically, if there's storm clouds ahead, the smart money will remove their money from the stock market and put it into something more safe, so a safer asset rather. So that's the
Depending
risk sentiment
on the signal. Yeah.
alone, but there's also other entities that we can infer from that. For example, importance. So if I
Mhm.
tell you, I ate a ham sandwich today and I bought some stocks, that's a very different,
Different
quality of
signal. Yeah.
very different signal
Exactly. I
exactly
understand. Yeah.
from say the Federal Reserve cut rates for the first time in 3 years, right? So both are obviously going to be good for stocks, but obviously the first one, if you're an investor, you probably don't really care what some rando on Twitter is doing, right? The Federal Reserve you do care about, okay?
So
So
that's the quality of the exactly
correct, correct,
of the signal. Yeah, yeah.
exactly,
So
exactly.
well that's where I'm getting actually because it's this is common topic, especially well in trading in general, but also in the Web3 market is something the technical product that it does sound impressive, and there are many things to kind of take from there are many things to speculate on per se, and obviously there's a big merge sometime in inequality from product to product, but users mostly in my opinion they need to understand what to trust,
Yep.
from my experience as well, maybe yours as well. So what not to overtrust is also very important because you cannot rely on something. So how do you signal this responsibility? When would be the user best informed to know not to overtrust it, but not rely on it either?
Right. So I liked how you used the word responsibility because I take it as my responsibility as the creator of this product to adequately communicate to the user exactly what it is, not just in terms of, the UI and what to show them, because obviously there's a lot of technical stuff going on. I could really go bonkers with that if
Absolutely,
I
yeah.
really wanted to, but it's my
It's a great product, yeah.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my responsibility as the provider to convey that information to the user in the most effective way possible. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, it's to emphasize that there is no magic bullet. There is no one size fits all solution. Your results may
Mhm.
vary, and that this is just a tool in your arsenal. For example, if you're thinking about buying stocks and you see, the risk sentiment is, I've designed it. We're actually trying to get a trademark on this called the riskogram. It's like a histogram, but of the risk, the articles and their risk measurement, their risk sentiment rather. And so if you see those starting to cluster into the red, I have it
Mhm.
-1, -2, and -3, then +1, +2, +3, and of course zero in the middle, right? So it's like kind of three levels of goodness or badness, right? So if you see things
Yeah.
deep in the red and you're thinking about buying a stock or buying, an ETF or doing going long on options or something like that, you might want to, throttle that back a little bit. Consider waiting because you could see lower prices. And same thing if you're considering shorting, but you see it, way on the green side. You know that this might be this rally might have some legs to it, and you might want to hold off a little bit. So obviously, there's everything in between with constructing strategies. It's really highly dependent on the user and the risk tolerances, blah blah blah. But it's at the end of the day, it's a tool like any other tool.
Exactly. Yeah. The highlight of the day that it's utility, right? That we're looking for.
I think that that's true in any investing. I mean, I have family members that would subscribe to, I won't give the name, but a very prominent, I guess, influencer in the space. And, he paid $2,000 for the subscription. And just internet man say push button, I push button, and he lost $10,000 that way. So
Oh,
true story to somebody who related to me. So I always caution people to do their due diligence and do their research, but at the same time use the tools that are available to you, right? So a lot of
absolutely.
times,
Yeah.
your better judgment is going to prevail. At the end of the day, it's your strategy. So just use the tools that you have available to you and don't ever make a decision just blindly. Okay, always do your
Yeah.
due diligence. Now, that being said,
Absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, that being said, this is a technical product. Okay, so it is a very highly developed, highly intelligent, if you will, product that I am working right now to create automated trading strategies with. Right, so obviously that's a different era. That's a different kind of echelon of trading, and there's risks with that as well. So it can be used in a automated trading strategy. I'm really trying to get this out to retail traders and hedge funds and things like that, small to mid-size hedge funds that don't necessarily have a team to develop this product, but it can definitely be used to supplement and enrich an existing trading strategy for a human. But
For
the
a team,
actual
I guess, as well.
or a team,
In this
yeah,
case, well, yeah,
yep,
yeah. It's actually just the way you mentioned, it's not necessarily you cannot only trust the product only, but also you cannot just rely on the human in the loop either. So
absolutely,
it's kind of both ways.
yeah,
Yeah, and
and
it's just it's kind of just to put this into context as a growth point of view, like a market growth point of view. It's not it's a different kind of awareness. It's beyond the human in the loop, beyond the product. It's, if I understand why, it's something. It's proof, explainability. I would say it's a workflow fit, and obviously risk control. That's
yeah.
one of the big flags you mentioned up
Sure.
there.
So the
Yeah, yeah,
primary value contribution is really the risk sentiment indicator because that is actually pulling data from an external source to a chart. When you look at a chart, you're basically, with some exceptions, you're basically looking at the open, high, low, close, and volume. That's it. If you add an indicator, that indicator is just doing math on the chart, right? So this is an extra kind of benefit because you're pulling data that's completely independent of that chart. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I along with this package, I also have indicators that do look at that chart and apply the signal processing and things to really optimize that signal there as well. So it really pairs well nicely together because we're combining AI driven analysis on the actual chart pattern versus on the news.
So because if we look at the news and what kind of goes around it, there's some obvious headlines and patterns that we can notice. Like there's always noise, there's always greed that is being projected, there's always some fear. So there's always some reaction kind of projected into the audience, which is normal depending on the released type of news, right? So, in what does your AI sentiment platform help users understand that they would likely miss on their own? Like something specific. Is there
Sure.
anything specific that you would like to mention?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, thank you for bringing that up. Anybody who's ever traded or worked with a trader or knew a trader knows that they're looking at multiple sources throughout the day. They might have 15 different tabs open for 15 different news services or more. And the first thing
Yeah.
that the benefit of this is that these news sources were hand curated by me. So they're of high trust. That's number one. Number two, you can at a glance get an understanding and a feel for the general risk sentiment at any given time. So what it does is, again, you can use this technology to individually, evaluate headline by headline. But that's not really terribly useful. What you want to do is get a feel of
Exactly what
what
you
the
want.
market is doing. Okay, so that's where the riskogram comes in, and you're able to kind of, again, get this little histogram of these risk sentiment measurements, and you start to see a whole picture. Whereas before, you would have to open up, have your browser and click through all these tabs and really kind of get a picture of what the market is doing. Which obviously you want to go through the headlines yourself probably and just get as much of an in-depth picture as you can. But you have this at a glance view at any given time what the markets are doing.
Yeah, so another question for you, Danny, is when your system converts a headline into directional sentiment, magnitude, and asset relevance, what should a responsible user do with that information, and should they absolutely not do with it?
Yeah, I think it's really good to highlight what this tool can and cannot do. There are folks online, and I know that we're going to get into trust here in a second, but part of the uphill battle is convincing people that I'm not a scam, right? And part of the way to do that is to emphasize, again, what the tool can and cannot do. Okay, so it's no magic bullet. It does have advantages, and I do believe that it is a very advantageous tool. I use it. But I do use it sparingly, right? It's always important to take into account what the tool is telling you and the relative importance of that in your trading strategy, right? So, there's a spectrum of tools that you use, some of which you might rely on a little bit heavily, heavier at some point or another. And then tools for which they're just your go-to. And this is more of a go-to for me, but I still have to couple that with my other trading skills, right? There's my other indicators that I just talked about. There's also levels, which is incredibly important. I'm mainly a levels trader and Fibonacci is included in that. So you kind of have to understand how to pair this with your existing strategy. Are you an Elliott wave practitioner? Are you a momentum trader? So understanding how to pair that with your own personal trading style, I think is really paramount in being successful with this tool. And, in the past, I did used to give courses on this, training courses to basically
Yeah.
show people how to use the tool and integrate it with their trading style. So again, what it does is it enriches information for a particular trading style. How you use it, that's really up to you. I can tell you all day about my strategy, but maybe we'll save that for a different podcast.
Yeah.
Um,
That's right.
and what it does not do is it is not a magic bullet.
So,
So
so what should the user absolutely not do with it? Like, let's say next thing that they're gonna do is something maybe
so
not
try
not
not to
advised.
have Yeah, try not to have such binary rules like if red, I sell, if green, I buy, right? Because there's a couple factors you have to take into account with this. Number one, a lot of times it might take some time for that information to bleed into the markets. Sometimes that could be instantaneously, like with a non-farm payrolls read or something like that, where algos are trading it. Sometimes it might take some time. It could take 5, 10, 15 minutes. Okay, so it's I like to think of this as a heads up. Okay, so
Yeah.
again, if I'm looking to buy, let's say the S&P ETF or something like that, and the risk indicator is telling you that it's red, my momentum indicators are telling you that it's bearish. That's not necessarily a bad thing because you could be getting a good price. But you also have to understand this is kind of a heads up that we might be in some danger. Okay. So if I'm looking to get a good entry price, I might want to wait until things balance out a little bit. So I think that, again, it's really
Okay,
important to
so
kind of
in
understand this as a whole package as opposed to just if green buy, if red sell, right? Internet man
is
push
not
button works for
as
nobody.
not as simple as straight up as
Correct.
that, right? Okay,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
more thought should be put into it than analysis in most cases, right? Is
Yeah, but it's not a
yeah,
complicated. It's not a complicated thing to use at all. I think it's if you woke up in the morning, let's say, I want to trade the markets at 9:30. I have a buddy who gets up at 6 and he's reading the headlines and he's really getting into it. I kind of think of this as a buddy, right? So I wake up in the morning. Maybe I'm not an early riser. I'm not, and so I'm kind of
so
rubbing my eyes.
your
And my buddy comes up to me and says, "Oh, the S&P is doing this. We have this
your
type of
AI
action. This
buddy, yeah.
it's an AI buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. That's pretty it paints a pretty clear picture of do's and don'ts so far. Another question for you is on the commercial side of things. You use graph-theoretic NLP, which sounds highly technical for most people, right? When they hear that, but particularly from a fintech founder point of view, product leader, growth marketer, and everyone else in the building spectrum of things. Why should graph-based analysis matter commercially? Is there something? What would be the major takeout from this?
Sure. So for me, you have to look at the genesis of this project from the very beginning. Um, I developed these tools again, dating back more than 10 years now, and they've gone undergone quite an evolution. Originally, as I mentioned, we used this kind of hybrid approach, an ensemble to use the technical term. Now, the graph theoretic approach has certain advantages. Again, this is something that I hand coded and highly, highly optimized. So a lot of times with the GPUs, when you use a GPU based approach, you're really having some overhead with how the GPU writes to memory. Like when you offload that, say, neural network onto the GPU, and the data to the GPU. That's where you incur the most latency. I'm not saying GPUs aren't a good tool. You just need to understand how to use them. And so you have products like TensorFlow and PyTorch and things like that. They typically get the job done, but they're not hyper optimized for very very low latency. So all of this graph theoretic technology was written by myself using C++. I'm also kind of a graph database specialist as well. And under the hood of a graph database is essentially a linked list. Okay, so all this really is a linked list under the hood, and some special sauce to be able to understand what do the nodes mean,
It's cool.
right? And how they connect to each other. And it's basically loosely, roughly modeled after kind of how the human brain does things in terms of an associative network. Whereas with neural networks and attention, obviously for LLMs, that's achieved through matrices, and the weights encode that associativity. This is encoded directly within a graph. So that's the short answer of why this is
From
of the difference and why it's
so,
powerful, right?
okay, so it's powerful because of reduced latency in a way,
Correct. Yeah.
and a capability of processing all this data in the
Yes,
way
and
that you want. Okay.
whereas a lot of natural language processing, it is very computationally intensive. This will run on a Raspberry Pi.
Oh, that's very interesting. It's
Yep.
easy to run.
Yep.
But in it's another question on the same topic is what would the limits be of this of using this?
Well, scalability. When you scale a graph network, it grows as n squared. because obviously you have to have the interconnections between those nodes. The LLM sized networks are obviously optimized for the internet, right? So granted, the other extreme is that you're dealing with sometimes a trillion parameters, right? This to scale this, you certainly wouldn't see the performance that I'm getting off of the sample set that I have. I should also stress that this is a very hyper focused model, right? So I'm taking data and headlines that I've had collected throughout the years and hand evaluated over time, over the course of all this time, right? So I've developed quite a training set. And it's hyper focused on that, obviously, with the cross validation to reduce what biases, I can. But it is hyper focused on financial data, right? So I
So
don't
yeah,
integrate. Yeah, yeah. So for the regime that I'm testing and the data that I have available, again, it's hyper optimized, not just in terms of the focus of the data, but in terms of the processing as well. If I was to open this up to a broader data set, then yeah, we'd probably be seeing some latency issues.
so well, hyper focus actually that's the word that kind of caught my attention right now because that's to me at least is says a quality strong base on the whole project. What would there are features that maybe shouldn't be implemented and others that they should. Maybe there's data that doesn't really help the user. So
Sure. Yeah.
my question for you is what
Yeah.
is the difference between giving users more information and giving them more usable intelligence versus that? So
Right. Yeah, so there's a term analysis paralysis where I don't know if there's a meme where it shows a chart and then there's just this like rat's nest
oh well, I will
of
have to look that up. Oh, it's
yeah,
a
so like
meme.
this
Okay, okay,
rat's nest
yeah.
lines and diagrams and indicators and things like that. And it's kind of like a funny trader meme.
I'm gonna
And so
have
we
that
call
on the
that
screen. That's for sure. Yeah.
yeah, we call that analysis paralysis, right? Where
Okay.
you just have so much just you're inundated with data on about the chart and you're unable to make a meaningful prediction based off of it. Or if you do, having too many indicators on a chart is one of the biggest one-on-one rookie mistakes, right? So you have all these indicators and you're just hoping that somewhere you're going to have the magic bullet. It's just not the case. Right. So again, going back to your statement earlier about my responsibility, well, my responsibility in serving this product in any kind of consumer form is that it's going to be in the best form factor that people will be able to get the most out of it. Right. So I have things very, very graphical, very, very intuitive or at least I think so, and it was designed that way, so that they can really maximize the capabilities of this tool. Can it do a lot more? Absolutely. There's a lot that I abstract from the user, just because at this point with the graphic user interface I developed. The strong points of the tool can be utilized, and the more technical aspects we say for like an API or something like that.
So from a business model perspective, who is the clearest customer for this type of product and for this type of information? For example, would you say it's specific for retail traders, professional strategists at teams we mentioned earlier, quants, fintech platforms, or institution, or is all of the above? Would you?
I think that an argument could be made for all of the above. I originally tried to have it be a B2B model. It just with larger institutions, it's very, very difficult to kind of get your foot in the door, and sometimes those proceedings could take years, right? So I kind of abandoned that model just because I wanted to be a little bit more nimble. And I also wanted to provide the everyday retail trader with an advantage, right? Because these, you got to understand when you're a retail trader, I mean, you're competing against the big boys. They're front running you. They're doing all sorts of things. They're doing whatever they can to make sure that you fail, right? Including disinformation, you name it, and they're doing it. So I kind of felt a moral obligation to at least give people the ability to have some tool to compete against that. Is it perfect? As we mentioned before, absolutely not. It should be thought of as a tool, but it is a tool that can help you compete, right? When you get into like the hedge funds, I was looking to maybe get into small to mid-size hedge funds. The larger ones have teams of people that work on this. So, a smaller hedge fund could potentially consume this information via an API, which is available, and integrate it into a larger strategy. That's really, I believe it would definitely shine with that because, as you know, hedge funds have this fairly complicated models. And they take in multiple data sources before they, make a decision. It's obviously good for analysis too, right? So if you're just purely into market analysis, just having that ability to see the directions of the markets and what the indicators are telling you, potential pivot points, all sorts of things like that, will become very, very apparent to you once you are able to use this and master this technology. So I think it's to answer your question, I think that an argument could be made for all of the above. It just depends on how they want to integrate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're still at the AI aspect of things, this question is maybe concerning most of AI startups nowadays. Um, it there Many of these startups, they struggle to turn technical differentiation into adoption. Something that stands out from pretty much not only marketing but business view as well. So, what have you learned? Is there anything you want to share so far?
Yeah.
What have you learned about building trust around a product that is mathematically sophisticated, but has to feel practical to the user, and obviously that has huge, important utility even for retail and other users alike.
Yeah. So, my old director at Citibank used to say that adoption is the key metric of success. So if you have a product, it could be just absolutely wonderful. A great example is the Newton from the original iPad, right? Great product. It
Okay.
was just ahead of its time. It couldn't really find a foothold in the market. And lo and behold, it was just reborn years later as the iPad, and then that was able to take. So there is something to be said for the right time and place, and obviously adoption is the key metric to that success. I've always found that to be true. The trust is, especially in trading or Web3, trust is a significant issue that any entrepreneur needs to overcome. We will name your
Yes.
crypto scam, right? So a lot of people, unfortunately, even though Web3 is a much broader, is extraordinarily broad subject area, a lot of people just have a sour taste in their mouths from that kind of stuff. You could say the same thing about anything to do with trading or investing. I mean, you just type those keywords into any search engine and you're going to see millions of courses and trading advertisements. And you always have, like, for example, the example I gave earlier of somebody subscribing to someone and blindly following them and losing a five-figure sum or more, right? So there's that's always an
There's that
uphill
aspect,
battle.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So especially after something like that, that there would definitely be, if not just more awareness, but more trust issues overall, and a
Yeah.
lot of friction
so
around that.
So
Yeah.
the way to overcome that, what I found is obviously good marketing, but time. Okay, so people need to see that you're not fly by night, right? So I have accounts where I have been giving daily market commentary for years, right? So when you see someone who's consistently there, who has skin in the game, who's making his own trades, you that starts to build credibility, right? Whereas you look at some of the others, fly by night, there's a lot of these,
Yep.
for
Kind of.
example, the forex trading platforms that will close the next day, those kinds of things. You really
Hmm.
want to establish trust and really put skin in the game. Like I said, I've been doing this since 2012 or so, and arguably interested in the markets for much since I was much smaller. My mom actually, we're Eastern European, so the women in the family tend to run the money, and so my mother was the one who taught me how to trade stocks at like age 6, right? So I have a long background with this, and I'm very, very happy and honored to be a part of the trading community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. But I guess that's what kind of brings you to beyond just counting money and mostly like to the deep tech products. Like I could call
Sure.
it deep tech. Yeah. What helped you translate graph-based AI signal processing and blockchain infrastructure into language that customer actually care about
Yeah.
it and understand?
So
Wait.
I was asked in an interview one time, and yes, I did get the job. What is my approach to communicating complex technical ideas to, say, a business audience or a leadership audience? And the answer is very simple, just two words, right? Simplicity and visualization. Right. So we need to keep things short and simple. Whenever I design a PowerPoint, I have a maximum of 3 bullets. I make sure the text doesn't bleed off the line, because anything more than that, people fall asleep instantly. I'm sure you can remember from
Absolutely.
university or a corporate lecture, just a PowerPoint that you just thought was awful and put you directly to sleep. And what's the first thing that you think of? A crowded screen, right? Where there's paragraphs, right? So keep things simple. That's number one. Number two, visualization. People are naturally visual, especially if someone is less technical. So they might not understand the jargon. They might not understand, even a table, really. They can understand pictures, right? So
Exactly.
that's why I invented the riskogram, which is again, kind of a distillation of the risk sentiment in the markets over time, right? A time window, so that you don't necessarily have to muck about with numbers or anything complicated. It's just one graph on the screen, and the text is presented in such a way that I studied this for quite some time to find the most optimal way, at least that I wanted to view the text. And it's in such a way that you could see multiple headlines at once, but they're not too crowded. And they're color coded based on the importance, right? So you're getting kind of two things at once. So number one, the simplicity, element is obeyed, and number two, the visualization capabilities. I really tried to maximize that to communicate the most that I could with the least amount of resources.
Um, yeah, Daniel, another thing I keep seeing in Web3, fintech, and AI as well, is that the product rarely fails because the technology is too simple, right? So simplicity is good. It gets the user to a certain point, but what I see the most, it fails because the market does not know what to trust. So it's a I would mention it's kind of a little bit of a loop that in the end we go back to trust. So when you're building something as technical as AI, sentiment intelligence, or blockchain verification, how important is trust architecture before adoption can happen? So before having those loyal users and people using the product full force.
Well, I think it's the really paramount to prove to them that I'm worthy of their loyalty, right? And so again, how I do that is through my credentials. Obviously, I've been doing this for quite some time. I'm trying to be as active as I can, on StockTwits and others, to basically give my commentary on the market. So if you think, if you doubt my abilities or you doubt this product, you have an archive that goes back years of verifiable predictions that you can go through. Are they right 100% of the time? No, and I'm not saying that's even possible. But are they right to an extent that you can, be profitable? Or that I'm profitable? Yes, that is absolutely true. And I think that if you just spend some time with that testimony, that it's hopefully going to win over people's trust. But it's hard, and I'm not going to say that it's easy. I probably picked the two most difficult subject areas to get a product off the ground with. Web3 is incredibly hard to win trust just because, we're unfortunately it's associated with some of the, less fortunate aspects of,
Exactly.
crypto and so forth. And trading, I mean, there's maybe one genuine person for 50 scams, right? And we all know the join my Bitcoin chat group on WhatsApp or on Telegram. Oh,
Yeah,
join
yeah,
this.
those type of headlines, absolutely. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. So
yeah.
it's hard, it's
Yeah.
difficult, but like I said, it's a time commitment and working with you for proper marketing.
Mhm. Well, that talking about well, it's on a different topic, slightly different because I did see you through the years. I've been in one of your classes, and there's always been a community there. Okay, so that's one of the things where I was trying to get to is from a growth and positioning perspective. I think the hard part is not just saying from what I've seen in your practice as well, it's not just saying, "Hey, we use AI" or "We're on the blockchain." So the hard part is proving why the user should care. So in your case, that someone has built communities as well, not just founded projects on a blockchain, right? What is the clearest business outcome Kovach Technologies helps create in a, let's say, in a bigger picture around communities and around all the products
Well, I
present at
think
this point?
there's this non-quantifiable business characteristic of caring, right? Like you do this because you care about people, right? And you want to give them something that they can genuinely use to enrich their lives in one way, shape, or form, right? So I have the second product that we haven't even touched on yet. It's called VirtuaSeal. We'll get to that in a second.
Oh, we're getting
Uh,
there. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah, but just to give you a kind of foreshadowing, that was meant to help people with their digital security and document verification, right? Document signing rather. With the trading tool, the risk sentiment, that's really genuinely given put out there so that people can have a weapon, if you will, figuratively speaking, obviously, a weapon that they could use to augment their trading style. It's something that I use, and so I believe firmly in the concept of skin in the game, right? Which means that if I wouldn't use something, I wouldn't expect you to use it either, right? So because I use it, I found it useful. Maybe other people will too. Yeah, so to introduce VirtuaSeal, it was a project that we have an alpha out right now. It's not quite ready for the markets, but it's under development. It was funded through a grant from the ICP coin and their blockchain, which is fantastic. And I'm not just saying that because I got a grant. It really is truly
Yeah.
something else. I highly recommend looking at it. But they gave me a grant to build this technology on their blockchain. And basically, the idea was to mitigate some of the scams that you see with DocuSign and other, signing platforms.
Exactly.
The additionally, my business partner and I, we have aging parents, so we want to make sure that older folks are protected in insofar as what we can. So the long-term vision is to integrate AI to look for signs of coercion, right? So if there's a malicious caregiver, for example, that's trying to get somebody to sign something they don't want to sign, we could look to understand that this person is A, of a sound mind, and B isn't being coerced to do something that they don't want. We could also give like a little quiz that they can, are have a rough understanding of what they're signing, right? So there's a lot of aspects that we bring to the table aside from the signing platform, which does leverage the blockchain for, consistency, for security. A lot of those, the signing methods are essential to the blockchain technology have been tried and tested for years and years. So we're basically
Yeah.
just leveraging that.
So what stands out to me is that virtual seal is it's not your usual token story that you hear most of the founders or pretty much one of the most popular projects that they kind of go around the token. Well, VirtuaSeal is not about the token. Used more as a trust layer where blockchain
Exactly.
actually improves the signing and verification
Mhm.
process compared to like a centralized e-signature platform
Correct.
that maybe other business, some certain businesses use.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
So if you look at both of those products, they have a very auspicious buzzword associated with them, right? One is
Yeah,
AI, and the other
that's
is
right.
blockchain.
That's
But if you hear me talk about my products, I will use those terms, but later, because those terms do not define the product. The product leverages them, right? So there was a time when, in maybe 2015, 2016, right before the crash, the crash of Bitcoin. We all remember those days. But
absolutely.
when just saying that you had a blockchain component in your company description was like an extra 5x valuation, right? And similarly with AI, it's like you could have a you can make vitamins and it has to be AI powered vitamins or something something like that. You know what I mean? You have to crowbar that term in, and this was never the case with me. I wanted to build the best
Mhm.
product possible using the best possible technologies, and that just happened to leverage my existing experience with AI and also with the blockchain for the signing and security.
So that's what we brings us to e-sign, right? It's what supports the validity and legal effect of contracts entered into electronically, right? And but that doesn't mean every blockchain signature workflow is automatically appropriate for every document, jurisdiction, or use case. Like example you had uh, with the sanity test, or are these tests something curated from a certain category, or how are you implementing this test on platform?
Oh, so I'm a big fan of doing unit tests in
Mm,
every piece of code that I write, right? So whether it's you know a some kind of data experiment, it'll always have something small. It'll always have unit tests associated with it. And so there's really no difference with any of the other products. Obviously, the more complex the product is, the more unit tests you want to have to really test it thoroughly. And I think that we've done a pretty good due diligence in doing that. So yes, the blockchain not only leverages
yeah.
a rich history of very notable hackers and cybersecurity professionals trying to break it. Donald Knuth comes to mind. Um, that it is obviously riding on those coattails, but we're obviously
Yep.
doing our due diligence to check the GUI and the actual app itself to ensure its consistency.
With VirtuaSeal, you're moving into a blockchain-based signing, verification, or auditability.
That's right.
What kind of customer or use case would benefit most from the trust layer, and why is now the right time for this type of infrastructure moving on the blockchain?
Yeah, I think so. As we mentioned before, an argument could be made for all kinds of different people from all kinds of different walks of life, from all kinds of different professions. However, My business partner is a patent lawyer, so we're really trying to integrate it with, his associates and through his contacts, just get folks in the legal profession to start thinking about it. I actually have a list of law firms that are kind of ready to test this product, and that are willing to get enterprise level subscriptions because they're not happy with DocuSign or whatever they're using. I don't mean to throw DocuSign under the bus for whatever
So like
for whatever
centralized,
reason.
what do you mean? It's like centralized
Correct. Yeah, and that's one thing
platforms.
to really
Yeah,
highlight about this is that there's a lot of trust. We talked about trust. There's a lot of trust that you have to have in that centralized signing platform, be it your document, maintainability, right, to ensure that
yeah.
that document appears as the one that you uploaded. Somebody didn't swap something in.
So VirtuaSeal, it's actually moving us into blockchain-based signing, verification, and auditability. What kind of customer or use case would benefit most from that trust layer, and why is now the right time for this type of infrastructure to move onto the blockchain?
Yep. So I think that like with the previous product we discussed regarding risk management, VirtuaSeal arguments could be made for various types of professions, various types of people from all walks of life. There's an argument to be made for it. That being said, we've chosen the legal profession as our kind of place to start. Beta testing and getting a user base. My business partner is a lawyer. He's handled my patents, and basically we're going to leverage this, leverage his contacts and his Rolodex, so to speak, to basically develop a list of people willing to test this and eventually use it and at an enterprise level. So we've also been just talking with other law firms, to get that queue of people who are ready to use it. So I think that that's going to be our first aspect. Another aspect, healthcare and insurance. As you may be aware, these subject areas are riddled with red tape and lots of paperwork. So I think that those could be ripe for some standardization, leveraging a new technology such as the blockchain. And then there's obviously the peer-to-peer aspect of it. Blockchain is inherently peer-to-peer, thus making it a really natural choice for, let's say, NDAs between individuals or other types of legal contracts that you might want to come up for whatever your purpose might be.
Yes, and I would like to stress actually on this aspect that it's nothing new for certain industries to move onto blockchain, especially in the legal field and
Mhm.
medical field as well. There's a lot of movement already. So that's what I find it's interesting about the project as well. It's not a token type of project that the token is a story, but it's actual blockchain blockchain derived utility.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that that's really important to emphasize that when I first learned about the blockchain, I actually remember reading the original white paper in like 2009 or something like that, and I just knew immediately it was going to change the world, right? And I don't say that in a cliche way. It's just the implementation had such ramifications that I still think that we're still learning about them, right? So again, this is not typically when you think of blockchain projects, you think of tokens or, a native blockchain with a coin associated with it. And that's all true. But there's a rich feature set that's just ripe for innovation and technology to just leverage it. Right. So again, this is not a token. This is not a coin. It's using a legitimate blockchain that's been established for many years, and leveraging its technological components to actually do something. Right.
So
And I think that this is what we need to start thinking about if we want Web3 to really flourish. Yeah, that's true in
It's
any
not about the
market.
blockchain, but it's in the end, it is about the utility. It's just what I would ask you again. Also, while on this topic, VirtuaSeal is pretty interesting as a product, and yeah, we mentioned it could be used by lawyers, it could be used in the medical field, by founders, compliance team, even or
Absolutely.
cross-border business,
Sure.
and I think that's another major aspect we should highlight, that cross-border business would usually would require more friction, but with this you could simply just get it done. You just get the document signed in just a few seconds. What other things do you think like it eliminates? Like what friction disappears from the old document signing process overall?
Sure. So number one, ICP is very easy to use, right? Whereas, with other Web3 wallets, although they're pretty, they're more or less, user friendly for folks who really, know what they're doing and crypto people, right? ICP I found a very easy way to make it work for everybody, right? So you don't have to have a special wallet. You don't have to have a crypto exchange where you buy and have to send to the wallet so that you have your hot wallet ready. That's just a lot of steps for a lot of people. So the number one, again, we want that adoption, right? And the way to make it the way to foster adoption is through simplicity, right? As you said, no product failed because it was too simple. Um,
So in a
so
way,
that
it helps. It makes it easier to build things on
Right,
this
right. Yes,
blockchain. And
absolutely.
okay,
ICP has a very rich support network for developers. So that was helpful to me to be able to leverage their technology to its fullest, right? Um, the other aspects, again, it is still an unsolved problem how you can automatically search for things like duress detection, for understanding with signing documents. So those are down the road, but those are certainly things we want to integrate, and a real strong selling point for the product itself. The security of the document and your signature, that consistency and reliability again leverages the blockchain to do that. So it's not a new innovation; it's just leveraging the blockchain to do that. And we have patents on
exactly.
these things, by the way, as we do with the risk management product as well. So these all of those things kind of come together to really make it a seamless cross-border experience that's highly accessible, right? So the bar of accessibility is really just your ability to access ICP, which again is a very user-friendly platform.
So that's apart from simplicity, I would ask Web3 products often fail when the user experience feels too technical, obviously. So simplicity is a major factor, but how do you make wallet login, smart contracts, hashes, blockchain timestamp, and everything else that comes with it, like feel invisible or intuitive
Mhm.
to a non-crypto business user, or maybe
Yeah.
a founder that would embrace the idea for his team? What is the formula behind it?
Yeah, so number one, what we really have to do is take off our technical hat and put on our human factors hat, right? So
Exactly.
the one question I always ask myself is, well, there's two actually. Would I use this like myself? And two, can I remove anything while not sacrificing the user experience, right? If I remove something and it takes away some of the functionality, obviously I don't want to do that. But are there things that I can, whittle down so that I have the leanest, most functional product? And that's always a exercise I go through when creating the user interface. Because people don't necessarily need to know about blockchain consistency and signing. They don't need to know the technical details of the hashes. They don't need to know, elliptic curves. They don't have to know any of that. They just have to know that their signature is secure
Mhm.
via the blockchain, which I think slowly but surely the populace is starting to understand, at least at a base level, right? They understand that there's this thing that's peer to peer, that kind of cooperates together as a network to ensure the security and consistency of the network and the transactions within it. So they kind of have an understanding of that. Most people do anyway. So now just the step again, they don't need to understand all the technical details that happen under the hood. Though it would be a selling point for anybody who wanted to, if the, for an investor down the road to highlight these things. And again, we do have patents on them. But they don't need to understand that. They need to understand that the document that they uploaded is secure and immutable. They need to understand that their signature, is safe, right? And that it's recorded properly. And, they need to be able to just navigate the product in the most effective way possible. And I like to really try to design my products such that you don't need a tutorial on it. It's just implicitly usable, right? So one thing that really annoys me is those little pop-up things that tell you how to use the widgets. Don't do that. I absolutely hate that. I just
Mhm.
always try to click through those as fast as possible. That's the most
Yeah.
infuriating to me. And again, I believe that that is an example of a developer programming for another developer, not a user.
In a way, when you have to over explain your product and what it does and how it works, is really not as optimized for your
That's right.
user in the
That's
end
right.
user. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, something is going more on the insightful kind of things. I mean, this conversation overall is pretty insightful. So there's a lot of things to take away from
Mhm.
here, but. To go into more founders philosophy, I would say it. Fintech in general, even Web3 infrastructure. What should the founder in this fields stop saying in their marketing, because it creates skepticism. Maybe it would create a bit more friction and instead of trust. I mean, and what should they say instead, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think that we want to avoid buzzwords. Now, I think it's important to keep the buzzwords somehow contained in the metadata for marketing purposes. But I don't know how many times I hear AI nowadays, and I've been involved in AI from the beginning, and it's beginning to infuriate me.
It's kind of like
Be-
here in blockchain. Yeah, it's pretty
right,
much
and I was
it's
gonna, I
always
was
on the yeah,
I was
yeah.
going to say the same thing with blockchain. So, like I mentioned, there was a time when you had an extra 5x valuation just
Mhm.
because you had blockchain somewhere. So everything's blockchain, 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 blockchain. Now everything's AI, AI, Gen
Yeah.
AI, AI. And so I think that you want to focus on what your product does and why it's valuable. What value is created for the user and why should they trust you? Right? Then, if your product does leverage these things, sure, that might be a good thing to mention, a good thing to highlight. But it shouldn't be your overall push, right? Your push shouldn't be contingent upon a buzzword that potentially and probably will be a bubble.
Yeah, exactly. So don't rely on the same buzzwords just because they bring attention. Looking at both products that we were mentioning earlier, since the beginning of this episode, and looking across both products mentioned, it feels like there's a common theme. That would be turning subjective or trust-heavy processes into verifiable intelligence. Um, is that a bigger Kovach technology thesis, or how would you highlight the bigger picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the really the I wanted to create a mission statement for Kovach Technologies. It might sound a little cliche, but I really believe this, and that is bringing the solutions of tomorrow to the challenges of today. right? So that is, how do we leverage technology, AI, whatever it is? How do we leverage our tools to provide value for common people or B2B or end users in general in such a way that really maximizes value, right? So I'm trying to provide a value proposal by, again, leveraging my tool set. And in some cases, that's AI. In another case, that's a blockchain, right? So yeah, we are maximizing the data science aspects and the machine learning aspects, leveraging the blockchain to really provide a product that at the end of the day I believe will be successful because it brings value.
Absolutely. So, do you mind repeating again? Yeah, you said something very interesting earlier. Starting with the yesterday product, bringing
So the solutions, I want to leverage the solutions of tomorrow to solve the challenges of today.
leverage the solutions of tomorrow to solve the problems of today. That is pretty insightful. Most probably we'll code that later if you don't mind.
Sure.
In the editing, since we're still at the founder perspectives here, and if you are advising a technical founder building in AI, fintech, or Web3 as well, would you agree that the real growth challenge is basically translating complexity into trust, trust into adoption, and adoption into measurable business outcomes? And if you do agree, what would you add or take out of that framework?
Yeah, I like that
Yeah.
flow. As a founder, you might have some great idea. You might be a technical person yourself, or if not, you have a technical team likely. And it's oftentimes very difficult to translate that into not only a product that will sell, but into something that will provide value at all. Right. So many times I've found founders fall on their face because they get caught up in details and, it just doesn't come through the way they envisioned it. I think patience is key. You don't, there is something to be said for getting the beta out. But at the same time, you always want to be constantly evolving and winnowing down your product into something that's usable, right? So the other aspect is trust in that pipeline, right? So how do you foster trust? You have to prove to the audience somehow that you're worthy of their attention, right? Obviously, that part of that includes a subscription, hopefully, if you're doing it right. But you need to basically prove to them that you're worth taking a look at. And how do you do that? Frankly, I don't know. I don't have the full solution. I could tell you what worked for me was just keeping at it, right? So developing a presence in the space. I'm not a big social media person, but I did choose a couple outlets to focus on and really show a presence there. So again, I have a verifiable, falsifiable even track record of presence in the
Yeah.
market, right? So that's really important to establish. And so yeah, I think that's probably. Oh yeah, and the other aspect was the KPIs. So again, I think that adoption is really the key metric to success. Once you start to have that adoption, once you've earned people's trust, then you'll likely see a snowball effect, right? Because again, there's word of mouth, the marketing is going to catch on. More than anybody that it's a long process and there's a lot of tinkering that you have to do. But once you start to see that adoption, that's like the hook that really can blast you off.
Oh, that. Thank you so much for your time today, Daniel. I appreciate your insights and your presence in this show. I'm looking forward to having you again. Hope you
Yeah,
had a great time, and thank you for
had a great
everybody
time. Really enjoyed the conversation.
that's trust to traction in Web3. Trust is a strategy. Traction is the proof. I'm Stefan Furcoi, and I'll see you in the next one.